So now that we added our API routes for the newsletter and for the comments, and that we wired up those front-end components for the newsletter and for the comments, now that all of that was done, it's time to work on the logic inside of the API routes. Because at the moment, we don't do anything in there. In the newsletter API route, we're just logging the entered email. And in the comments API route for the post case, we also, in the end, just log our comment here. And that, of course, is not too helpful. That's not the goal. Instead, we want to store that data more permanently. And we could, of course, use a file for that. We could re-add a data folder in our project with some JSON or text file and write that data to that file. But I would argue it's more realistic to use a database, and therefore that's what we'll do. I'll use a real database here. I'll use MongoDB. MongoDB, of course, is just one option. It's not a must-use option, but I will use it because using MongoDB with Node.js is particularly easy, and it's also a production-ready, scalable database, which is a great choice for pretty much all projects, for a lot of projects. Let's put it like this. And that's why we'll use MongoDB. Even better than that, we can get started for free. If you visit mongodb.com and you go to pricing, you'll see that they have various offerings, and we will use the cloud service here, MongoDB Atlas. That is their fully managed cloud database service, which we can use without setting up anything on our local system, which is great. And we can get started for free here, which is awesome. So we can click on Start Free here, actually. Or in the top right corner, click on Try Free, click on Cloud then, and then get started for free here by signing up. Just fill out these basic details and sign up. I already do have an account, so I will log in with that. And once you did sign up and log in, you should be greeted with some screen that looks something like this. You should be able to build a cluster and then there use a shared cluster. So create a cluster here where you can get started for free. Now a cluster is basically a server, you could say, which will then later host your databases, you could say. Now here we need to choose a cloud provider, which will be used under the hood. And we can stick to AWS here and basically keep the defaults. For cluster tier, let's stick to the M0 sandbox, since that's available for free. And for the additional settings, we also can stick to the defaults, and we can also keep that default cluster name and create that cluster. Now this will set up this database cluster, which will then enable us to connect to this cluster and store data in the databases there. And using it will be super simple. Now, whilst this is getting set up, we can go back to our project already and quit the dev server and install an extra package with npm install. Because in order to communicate with MongoDB and to send queries to MongoDB, we need to install a new third-party package. If you search for Node.js MongoDB, you also find it on npm. It's this MongoDB package, which is the official driver for MongoDB. So that makes connecting and talking to the MongoDB database super easy then. So we should install MongoDB, this MongoDB package here like this with npm install MongoDB. And this will install this third-party package, which we'll then use in our server-side code to talk to MongoDB, to our cluster, and to store data. And to fetch data as well, of course. And the important thing here really is that we'll use it in our server-side code. So in these API routes, we will not use this MongoDB package in any client-side code. Because it's not optimized for that. It might not even work there because there is a high chance that it uses Node.js APIs internally. And B, even if it does work in the browser, it would be a security issue. because for talking to the database, we will need to plug our credentials into the code, and we don't want to do that in any code our users can see, because they could then abuse those credentials to hack into our database. That's why we want to run such database code only on the server side, so only in our API routes. Now, connecting to the cluster is done here now. And when we clicked on Connect, we can choose Connect Your Application, and we see code which we can use to connect to our MongoDB cluster with the Node.js driver here. And that's what we're going to do in the next lectures.